Hello, I'm Melissa Ojeda, the Marketing and Public Relations Manager for Grand Canyon Conservancy, the official nonprofit partner of Grand Canyon National Park. And we work hand in hand with the Park Service to provide educational opportunities as well as digital programming to keep you connected to Grand Canyon. And thanks to your ongoing support, we're able to share this new series, History Behind the Arts, providing you an in-depth look at the Cultural Demonstrator Program at Grand Canyon. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce you today, Cultural Demonstrator Program Coordinator, Grace Lilly.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We have the pleasure of talking with Rose Bighorse, a Dene Navajo weaver, joining us from her home in Flagstaff in northern Arizona. Rose grew up just outside of Grand Canyon and has been connected to this landscape and weaving her whole life. Thank you for joining us today, Rose.
Thank you.
Can you share a little bit about yourself and what drew you into weaving?
Hello out there. My name is Rose. Let me first introduce myself to you in Navajo, which is our traditional way of introduction. Again, my name is Rose. I am a Sadeshkizhni clan. Related to a Keani. Maternal grandparents are mini goats, and my paternal grandparents are Deerwater. So the way I say that in Navajo would be Keani Bashishin as a Lana Dashache BP28 Dashanella. That is the woman I am. And I grew up here. I was born not too far from where that picture in back of you, the desert view. I would say it's about maybe 8 miles going towards east, towards the reservation. I grew up though across from this the desert view right there, way over on the other side. You can see the Vermilion Cliffs. A little beautiful place called Willow Springs, Arizona. That's where I grew up. So and I really didn't really start. I started weaving helping my mom, me and my sister Kathy. She used to make huge rugs, and we used to help her finish the rugs. But I didn't really take weaving seriously until I became a single mother. That's when I started really focusing, mostly because I needed the money. I was a student we're living in Phoenix, and I was going to college, and I had part-time jobs. I had 2 of them, I remember. So again, I wasn't really introduced to, I was doing it. We're doing the hand carding, and the spinning a lot with my sister. And my mom, whenever she finished huge rugs, the ending is a very tough area. It's very tight. She needed little hands like ours, and that's where we used to help my mom finish them. And as far as I can remember, of course, the reason why I didn't really get into it right away is because I moved off the reservation to go to school, and I came back during the summers. Like I said before, I was on what they call a Mormon placement program, where we were at the school year about, I think it was 6 months out of a year. No, let me say half of a year we were there. And then half of a year we came back over here to the reservation. And I was in a kind of like in a white man's world, nothing of what the reservation that I was living here on the reservation was so different over there. I mean, I had foster families who were very filthy rich. We had my first foster family, they had an indoor swimming pool. This was way back in the 60s. I would say 64 or 65. I was put in a public school, which I was not used to either, because I went to boarding school most of the time here in Arizona and on the reservation. I went to Tuba City boarding school. And I remember coming back during the summertime, that we got bused back in. There was a bus that I wasn't the only one from my area that went to on placement. There was my brother that went with me. He was placed in Park City with a family, and I was placed in Holiday, Utah with a family. And there was other kids, from Cameron that were with different families. So when school got out, we all got on a Greyhound bus and we were all shipped back over here, mostly Tuba City and the Cameron area. We were bused in together. And when we got back over here, we were back to the Navajo traditional life, which was, it's really hard to switch from being so modern and then coming back to, the reservation. We herd sheep, I grew up without running water. I grew up with, on the reservation, I grew up with no water. We didn't have electricity. We did a lot of herding sheep. So that's the reservation life back then. And my family, we moved around a lot too. We were like Mongolians, you know how they move around? That's how it's like that. If the vegetation is gone, we want our livestock to be fat. So we will move to another location where, the vegetation was better. So that we took up all our stuff, put everything in a wagon, and we went over there and we stayed there for about maybe a month or two. But during the summers, we stayed in one place. And then I would go, then of course, when school got in, I went back to my Mormon family. But again, during the summers, we did help my mom. Me and Kathy, my sister, were always helping, There was a lot of work compared to what we did, on the reservation in traditional way, you got a lot of chores to do. Now, over here, I had chores to do, but it was just mostly washing dishes. And my foster sister would either wipe the dishes or, we both go back and forth. I don't remember doing a lot of, housework because I think we had a maid. So, but over here on my mom's side of we were poor if you saw it from a white man's view. But to us, I felt, I didn't feel that we were poor. We were, there was nothing really, we had food to eat. We have our sheep, and then, so it was I always say that I kind of grew up different, the white man's way and the Navajo way. Again, there was very little weaving. So again, like I said, I didn't really take it seriously until I got pregnant and I became a single mother. And I guess I needed the money. So I enrolled in a college up in Phoenix, Arizona. And that's when I told my mom I want to make a loom, but it wasn't really a loom like you see nowadays, the long one, the upright one. Mine was just a small basic something that I can carry in my car and carry around, with me, or in the car mostly. And it was a hand loom to make my pillows. So so I made that loom, and I went back to Phoenix. On weekends, I would come back. And then on day, if I get stuck somewhere, if I forget how to, when you're weaving, you kind of tend to forget, how was it that I was supposed to do this? I need to correct it. And there's the only way that I got to go back to Cameron. So that's what I used to do. I would run all the way back down to Cameron on a weekend, and she would fix it for me. But I kind of enjoyed doing it. And I remember one day I was at the Phoenix Indian Center, And there was a guy, a director, I can't remember his name, but he was the one that told me, we are looking for a weaver. Can you be our demonstrator? So, but I needed the money, so I said yes. So I did it. I was, it was a Barry Goldwater. I don't know if you remember Barry Goldwater, but he was the governor of Arizona back in something like the 70s, early 70s or late 70s. He was a governor, and he was doing a show right there in Phoenix, downtown, one of the tallest building right there in Phoenix. And I did the show with him. I was kind of like a sidekick, you know, I can't remember what you call it, but I did pillows, and I was really surprised. I sold some of my pillows, and I think that's when it really started. Once the money started, you know, I started seeing the money. I said, I'm gonna do it, you know. I think I fell in love with, well, I already like weaving the small ones because it was really easy to set up, and it was kind of, depending on what the design is, you know, if you can finish it fast, there was some designs that are, you know, that you can do fast, like designs like this. It's pretty fast. I can do it with maybe one a week, and then the other half a week. So I would say about maybe 3 weeks at the most to finish everything. Cleaning, stuffing, ironing, sewing, that all goes into this. Now, if it's a little bit more like this one right here, that takes a little bit longer. And this is the storm pattern. And that's a little bit more design, a little bit more detailed, a lot more work put into it. So, but I enjoyed doing it, and I enjoyed coming up with designs. And this is another hard one. This one is it's the Outcast design is what this one is called. And this is a little bit, a lot harder than that one. So, but anyhow, I enjoyed doing it because there was money. Once I finished one rug, a set, I would just go, the way I sold it was just walking around downtown Phoenix and going into shops. Like there was an ice cream parlor there, and she always bought from me. And then she would refer me to somebody else that liked it. So that's how I would make my money. Of course, I had to really do a lot of thinking to kind of keep my expenses, you know. So all these little pillows that I was making helped me through, you know, through living in Phoenix. Because again, I was a single mom. I wasn't really aware, I didn't really know a lot about paying rent, but after I moved down there, I found out what paying rent is and expenses. Because down in Cameron, I live with my mom, and of course we help every now and then, I guess. I didn't know anything about paying rent. So that's about how that's how I started weaving. And to this day, I still do it. I finally put up a huge loom, an upright loom, because I want to do something else with, it's going to be a little bit different weaving. It's kind of like contemporary art that I'm going to I want to start doing that.
Well, thank you, Rose. That sounds amazing. You do come from such a rich history of being so close to Grand Canyon and living off the land, but also having those new experiences of the Anglo world, I'm sure really helped you understand what you needed to do to take.
Oh, yeah. So it was so different, you know, from anything from the rest of life to the modern world.
Very different. Well,
very different.
Yeah, so let's take a look at some of the materials and the tools that you might need to use to create your pillows and other rug materials. Do you want to go through those?
Okay, yes. This is the first thing you do is sheep shearing. Usually, most people on the reservation do their shearing right around March. And some people had so many sheep that they had to bring in other families to help out. And I remember my family, we had to have, my aunts and uncle all lived not too far from us, so they all had a lot of sheep. And we kind of helped each other shearing sheep. Shearing 100 sheep is not you can't just do it with one family. It's got to be at least maybe 5 or 6 families. So that's the first thing you do is shearing sheep. And I never really learned how to do that. I don't know why. I was always, me and my sister or so, we were always herding sheep, while this was going on, or helping cook for everybody else that was there. So, and it's I always look at the sheep. It's so heavy. Their coats are like a jacket, and then they get all sheared up and they're all skinny. I used to like that. They were just so cute when they get so skinny. And I used to kind of, I didn't know you were this skinny. They would look at you like, they like it. So okay. The next thing you do is the carding, which I have right here. This is my carder. This is what I use to, let me see if right here. It's got the brush right here. And then what you do is, I've made some already, but these are, I'm gonna redo it. This one goes here. But you just brush it. Of course, this is I've been looking on internet, and I've seen a lot of machines that other nationalities use. That like the people across, like the Ukrainians, they do a lot of this. They do a lot with wool. And there was one lady that I got friends with, and she has a machine. She can put a lot of it in all at once, and and she would it would do this. So her production is a lot faster than not this way. This is kind of uncomfortable sitting up. I usually I'm sitting down doing this. And of course it gets really messy because it's all over the place now. Let me see if I can see.
I can see it, Rose. So are you basically brushing the dirt out of there?
Yeah, the dirt. Well, first you took out the dirt, but along the way, dirt will fly out, and then the next step to the is the spinning. This is my spinner right here, and you just kind of go again. I'm sitting on a chair, so it's kind of hard for me to do. Anyway, you spin it into strings. They're long strings, and that's the wool that you use to to make designs. And then the third step is the dyeing. Okay, a lot of people back in the old days used to do a lot of dyeing from all the natural herbs around the reservation, like tea plants was used to make yellow. And I never really got into that. Like I said, my mom was the one that did it. She never really showed us how to do that, but she did what she really did. And she didn't really go look around gathering plants either. What she did was she did everything is natural up to the point where she started using dye And we got that from the Cameron Trading Post. It was commercial dye. And she got some really, she made some really beautiful colors out of those dyes. So with me, all that dyes, the commercial dye is all gone too. I tried looking on internet to see if I can find some. I never did. What I used to do is, again, going down to Cameron, I used to buy the wool, commercial wool, their mohawk, mohair wool. And I used to, that's what I did. They were already spun, but I respun them to make it a little thinner. And the colors, I got about maybe about 5 or 6 colors to do one pillow.
Can you tell me what the benefit is of having a thinner wool versus the thicker wool?
Okay, the thinner wool is the one that, okay, people, Navajo ladies use different types of, there's some that are big wools that, they're, let me call it string rather than, the string, the bigger ones are kind of made with like a horse, a saddle blanket. So, and then the next step is a little bit thinner ones. That's the one I use a lot. And some ladies, they really make their skinny, really skinny, and I can't do that because that takes forever. I found out because we tried that one time. And so I stick to the middle, and that's what that's how the width of my wool, that's how I would rather stay in the medium. Anyway, that's how it goes.
Yeah. So after you've spun your wool, that's when you start getting your loom ready, right?
Yeah, that's after you dye and all that, and then that's when you start the process of warping. That's the one that, the string goes back. Now this string is a lot thinner than the thinnest one. That's what you use to do the warping. That's a string that goes back and forth, up and down, up and down. So she's doing one that's it's going to be this is going to be the top to bottom. So she's going back and forth, back and forth. She has the ball of the yarn right here. Puts that over this way, and then she goes on top, and then she goes on the bottom, and then she goes on top. So it just goes back and forth. Yeah, figure 8. Yeah, and the small ones are pretty quick and easy because it's just right there before you. I've seen my mom where we helped her. She's made huge rugs. I mean, one of the big rugs that she has made, you can see it right here.
Yeah.
There is my mom's house, and that's her steps, her front step, and that whole the door is right in back of her. So this almost covers the whole, front of her house. So that's how big she used to do it. And the way we used to do the warping is that she would be sitting way over there, and we would be sitting over here, and we would toss the ball back and forth, and that's how she used to do it. I've never really tried attempting to do a huge rug because I don't have anybody to help me. So I stick with the little pillows because they're a lot faster to make.
Yeah.
The next one is setting up. Again, this is very tedious and sometimes poles are heavy. And again, this lady right here, she looks like she's got muscles, and she's working with a lot of iron pipes that are very heavy. My mom used to work with a lot of heavy, because the heavier, the sturdier, because you don't want your yarn, because your yarn can make it bend if the pipe is too thin. So, but this is what she's doing. It's I've done this before with my mom, and this is the setting up of the board. Now this is the where the you start the weaving. And some of the tools that I use is here. This is the batten right here. This is the one that you okay. It's kind of hard to explain there how you set up. Once you set up the wool or your warping and your loom is all set up, and then you got to go. Okay, remember it's a figure eight. The figure eight, the one at the bottom, is one bunch that you pull that will, that you put this through, and you can put the yarn through it, and then you pound down on it. And to pound down on it, these are this is one of them that these are my favorite ones. These are the ones that I keep. I have a whole bunch of these, all different size. There's some that are about that big. I have, but my mom has a lot of all different size. But these are my, this is the one that you finish with, the finishing touch, way up when it gets really, but then it gets really, when it gets really tight, sometimes I use a fork a lot. I have one of my kitchen fork that I have that I just usually, get in there and push it all the way down. So yeah, these are things that we use to, these are the, when you're making your designs. What I usually do when I'm finishing my, almost finished, I use a really thin, what do you call it? I don't have it with me, but it's my, it's just a wire, but it's really thick and it doesn't really bend. That's the one I use to finish. Very thin, even thinner than this one here. So that's what I usually use to finish, so it's kind of, weaving is it's very, once you get the hang of using all the tools, once you get to get your designs out, it gets easy, and you start, my mom has been doing the same old thing ever since she was 8 years old. She started at 8, and she's about 87. No, she's about almost hitting 90, and she still does her weaving. So, and then some other tools that I have. This is the bag that I use to carry all my tools. Of course, I have a yardstick now. And again, this is one of the thinnest. When you're finishing it, way up at the close, I say about you have about that much to finish, to the end. This is what you can use. But the way, like I said, I use an iron, my iron that I have. I've had that forever. And these are all just different size. Here's another one that I like to use. Now this one, what I do is, your ball of okay. This one is the one that you can, especially when there's about that much, and you can't put your finger all the way through. So you use this one. What they do is just you wet your finger, and then you get your wool, and then you twist it a couple of times. And then, you twist it all the way down, and then you push it through. So it gets rougher and rougher, so it's, pretty soon you're using, shoot, I didn't bring that. It's kind of like a needle that you just have to, it's like a sewing needle. That's the one I use. And then you start doing that. That's almost like the finish. So it gets really rough towards the end of the weaving. So, but these are some of the tools I have. Mostly a lot of just kind of like straight things. Here's another one of my, the ones that I like to use towards the end It's just a small,
Yeah, well, that looks great, Rose. Thanks for sharing that. Is there, that's a very long process from start to finish to create these amazing pillows that you do and other rugs. But I'd love to hear a little bit about the history of weaving within the Dene and culture.
the white people or books nowadays that you see, they say that the weaving was derived from the Spanish people. And I think I told you before that, well, you know, there's no Spanish people weaving, you know, they're not weavers. I think it really came from South American, you know, Indians, ladies. Now they're the weavers. They do a lot of weaving. I think that it came, you know, it came down from there. And I don't know what their story is, but our story in Navajo is about that the spider woman is the one that introduced us to weaving, because she's the weaver. She's the one that has a web, you know, and she is in a lot of our stories. Okay, the Navajos believe that the white shell woman, she's kind of like Mary, you know, God's Jesus' mother. She's kind of like her, you know. And then she had some sisters, and Spider Woman might have, I think, was one of the sisters. So I'm not really too sure about the Spider Woman. All I know is that she is the one that gave us the art of weaving to the Navajo girls, the young Navajo girls. Now there are songs that help you along, you know, that were introduced in ancient years, but those songs are all gone. But I am hearing that some people still, some weavers still know, but it's going, you know, it's going extinct. There's hardly anybody that knows those songs. I have heard one lady, I heard of a lady in Window Rock that still knows that song. And I would love to learn how to sing that song. And that's a song that kind of teaches you how to be patient, how to make designs. You know, it's a very good song. It's just, you know, just there to help you along the way of weaving.
Yeah, well, that's great. It's
That's
an old history. It's been passed down from generation to generation through many Southwestern tribes. So I'm so glad to hear that you've learned it from your mother. And have you had the opportunity to teach anybody else, Rose?
I tried teaching my daughter, the one that came in. They don't have the patience.
Patience is hard. You've got to.
Yeah, I think the only, okay, my mom introduced me and my sister, me and Kathy, and we're the weavers. In fact, this is my sister's weaving back here.
Beautiful.
That's how beautiful she made. My mom makes storm pattern, one of the best storm pattern weaver. And this is my sister's weaving. And I'm kind of getting better. This is my storm pattern made out into a pillow.
Yeah.
I've done some storm pattern on a rug, you know, an actual upright loom, and it came out really good, really nice. So no, but my sister is not taking it seriously anymore. She does really beautiful work. If I were her, I'd be, you know, getting them out like that. But you know, again, weaving is not something that you can do within a day or two. It takes months, the bigger months. And like I say, it's not an 8-hour thing either. It can be really hard sitting, you know, with your sitting is really hard. Your knees. I don't ever, the way my mom weaves, she sits with her knees like this. She sits on, you know, her knees. I can't do that. I tried that one time, and boy, I couldn't even get back up because my knees were so, you know, like this. That it was hurting me. So, and my daughter, she don't want to learn. I've asked her. It's kind of dying, you know, but it's not really dying on people that really want to, do it as an art, that want to make money. And that's what you see a lot of those in the art shows, like the Santa Fe Indie Market. We have a lot of men weaving now. And they're coming up with designs that I have never seen. They're very competitive in that way. And that's how they're, I think that's what keeps them going, is being competitive to see who can come out with the best looking designs. Maybe I don't.
Sharing that amazing history of the weaving, as well as things are going contemporary. People are trying new things, but the Dene people have woven for a long time and have a strong connection to Grand Canyon. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what Grand Canyon means to the Dene Navajo people, and also kind of how it was important during the long walk to you all?
I'm not really, my mom never really talks about the long walk. All I know is that my grandparents participated, or they were taken down to Fort Summers, and when they were released, they were coming back. They were given some sheep so they can start getting their life back together again. And my grandfather was born coming back. They were coming. The family was walking back. And I think they were given a horse, but because I heard that they had a horse where they all took turns riding the horse. My great grandmother was, she was pregnant, and they had to make a camp somewhere in Denevito, Arizona. And she had her baby, which was my grandfather, and then it took them a while to get back to where they were. That was their land, that's where they left to go on a long walk, and that's where they returned. And that was to Willow Springs, Arizona. If you look across from from the watchtower, if you look straight across, you will see it looks like an oasis. It's against the Vermilion Cliffs. We had a lot of water. We had a lot, I remember when they came back, they found out that there was some white people that had, taken over. And I don't know how long the long walk wasn't all that, some like 3 or 4 years that they were down there. So within that 4 years, I think these white people harvest the land so beautifully. They grew grapes, they grew apricots, and apple, and they made the land really nice because we had so much water up there. I remember having about, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4 ponds, big ponds too. They're just that little tiny, they were huge. And we used to swim in them too a lot. So and then there was another one right in the middle that, people that were, my relatives were down here at the bottom, that's where they used that water. And then there was a huge one way at the bottom. And that one was for, we had a lot of people that brought their sheep over there to, let the cow and then let them drink. So I grew up in that really beautiful area. And I don't know, I asked them, well, how did you get rid of these white people? They took over, and I asked that to my mother, and she says that the way they did it was that they just told them, we're back. This is our land. This is where we grew up. This is where my kids grew up. My grandfather, great grandfather was the one that was telling these white people. And I found out they were Mormons. So they just said, well, I guess we'll just be moving on again. And that was the reservation. So they could be on the reservation. And when the long walk started, people, the soldiers didn't know where the heck, they didn't know anything about it. All they saw was a canyon. People used the Grand Canyon as a hideout, and not just as a hideout. People used to go down there for salt. There was a lot of salt down there that they used to bring up. And just to go down there and just like during during the winter time, it was warm down there, so people didn't make camps down there. And right behind you, where you see all the water, and of course the water, people, that's where the livestock could, and there was a lot of vegetation there. So, and I practically grew up right there behind, the watchtower down below, um, where Table Mesa is. We call that Low Basin in the Navajo. Um, um, we have a name for it, I forget, but I practically grew up there. That was that's where we herded sheep. We had a lot of cattle down there. And my family and then of course I was born just right there. And I think that I might be the last one that was born in that area. Because before that, they didn't really have a lot of our Navajo ladies didn't have access to run to Tuba City or anywhere so a lot of them just had babies right there. So there's a lot of birth in the area. But I would say that I was probably the last one because my mom couldn't get to the hospital on time. My dad had gone, taken the vehicle somewhere. And so she started going into labor. So I had my aunt that was my godmother. So I was just born right there at it's about maybe 3 miles from the borderline. And I was born about maybe 3 miles from there, kind of going up the mountain there. So I have I have a strong connection to that area because my aunt still lives there. And I love that place. It's so beautiful. Looking down, you can see the canyon, it's like a snake. It looks like a snake when you're up where you're, and it's down below. You can see the little Colorado River or gorge, the little Colorado Gorge from the east, and it just winds all the way into Table Mountain. And then it goes all the way, and it was beautiful. I just used to love to sit there and think that is a huge snake. So, yeah, I have a lot of connection to Grand Canyon. That's my birthplace.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing that beautiful connection. And that is a deep-rooted one that you've been able to live through your years. We do have to start wrapping things up, but I just wanted to give you a quick opportunity. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience today?
Okay. Well, let me just show. This is my latest creation. It's again, this is a different type of weaving. I got a fringe in the middle with a Indian head. This is one of my awards from the Santa Fe Indian market. The first time I applied, I got accepted, and this is what I got. Okay.
Amazing accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for taking the time to share your knowledge, experience, and skills with us today. It was an honor to have you be a part of our cultural demonstration program, and we appreciate your efforts in helping more people feel connected to Grand Canyon, its history, and its spirit. So thank you so much for joining us today, Rose.
Thank you too.
Yes, thank you, Rose, as well. This was really educational, and I loved seeing all the examples and a lot of the tools that you use. It is just fascinating. And thank you, Grace, as well. And for those of you guys that are watching, the Grand Canyon's Cultural Demonstrator Program is made possible with support and grants from Grand Canyon Conservancy and Art Place America. To learn more about artisans in this program, go to grandcanyon.org/demonstrators. Stay tuned for more history behind the arts features on both Grand Canyon National Park and Grand Canyon Conservancy social media pages. Thank you for watching.